There's a name that's whispered in conspiracy theories, memed across the internet, and blamed for everything from stock market crashes to global conflicts. Not a government. Not a corporation. A family. The Rothschilds. For over 2 centuries, this single name has meant different things to different people. To some, they're financial geniuses who built the modern banking system. To others, they're puppet masters controlling world events from the shadows. But here's what nobody asks. What if both versions are wrong? What if the real story is more fascinating than any conspiracy and more human than any legend? Today, we're going to separate fact from fiction. Strip away 2 centuries of mythology. And discover how a family of coin traders became the world's most persistent financial legend. Because the truth? It's stranger than you think. 1744, Frankfurt, Germany. A cramped street in the Jewish quarter. Houses packed so tightly together that sunlight barely touches the cobblestones. In one of these houses lives Meyer Amschel Rothschild. Not a banker, not a financier. A coin dealer. He buys, sells, and trades rare coins for collectors. It's modest work, respectable but unremarkable. But Meyer notices something others don't. Information travels slowly in the 18th century. News from London takes days to reach Frankfurt. Word from Vienna might take weeks. But Meyer realizes, whoever gets information first makes the profit. So he does something revolutionary for his time. He builds a network, not of banks, not of businesses, of people, couriers, messengers, informants, a human internet spreading across Europe, carrying financial news faster than anyone else can access it. When a prince needs rare coins, Meyer knows before other dealers do. When a collector dies and their collection comes to market, Meyer's already positioned to buy. It's not magic. It's information arbitrage. And it's just the beginning. By the 1790s, Europe is changing. The French Revolution erupts, monarchies tremble, borders shift overnight. And governments desperately need something they can't print. Credit. Wars are expensive. Armies need food, weapons, uniforms, and payment. National treasuries run dry within months. Traditional lenders can't handle the scale. Can't move money across borders fast enough. Can't guarantee delivery when roads are filled with soldiers and spies. But the Rothschilds can. Meyer sends his 5 sons to the financial capitals of Europe, Frankfurt, London, Paris, Vienna, Naples, not as immigrants. As nodes in a network, they don't just send money. They send information, intelligence, market conditions, political developments. When Napoleon marches toward Austria, the Rothschild in Vienna knows before the Austrian government does, because his brother in Paris sent word 3 days earlier. When British troops need payment in Spain during the Peninsular War, the Rothschilds move gold across enemy territory using secret routes, false bottoms and wagons, and a network of contacts that transcends national loyalty. They're not choosing sides. They're providing a service that both sides desperately need. And in doing so, they're inventing something that will change finance forever, the international bond market. Here's how it worked. A government say, Britain needs to borrow £10 million to fund a war. But where do you find £10 million? The Rothschilds realize you don't need one person with £10 million. You need 10,000 people with £1,000 each. So they create bonds. Essentially IOUs from the government promising to repay the loan with interest. Then they sell these bonds across Europe through their network. A merchant in Hamburg buys some, aristocrat in Paris buys others. A trader in London adds more. Suddenly, capital that was locked in local economies is flowing internationally, funding nations, enabling trade, creating liquidity. The Rothschilds aren't just bankers. They're building the infrastructure of modern global finance. And they're making a fortune doing it. By 1815, when Napoleon finally falls at Waterloo, the Rothschild family isn't just wealthy. They're systematically important. Governments depend on them. Markets watch them. Competitors study them. But here's the crucial part most people miss. Their real advantage wasn't money. It was trust. Let me explain why trust matters more than capital. In the early 1800s, banks failed constantly. Credit collapsed. Currencies became worthless overnight. But the Rothschilds? They honored every debt, even when it hurt them. There's a story documented in financial records about a crisis in 1825. A banking panic sweeps London. Institutions collapse. Credit freezes. The Rothschilds have enough gold in their vaults to survive. They could close ranks, protect themselves, let others fail. Instead, they lend, they support other banks. They inject liquidity into the market, not from charity, from strategy. Because they understand something fundamental. Their business doesn't survive in chaos, it thrives on stability. When other banks collapse, trust in the entire system evaporates. When the Rothschilds support the system, trust in the Rothschilds grows. This is how you build a reputation that lasts centuries. Not by hoarding wealth, by becoming the foundation others build on. And that reputation? It becomes currency itself. By the mid-1800s, the Rothschild name on a bond is worth more than the paper it's printed on. Their backing makes investments safe. Their involvement attracts other investors. They're not just financing projects, they're certifying them. It's the ultimate network effect. Success breeds trust. Trust enables larger deals. Larger deals bring more success. But this is exactly where the mythology begins. Because here's what happens when one family becomes this successful, this visible, this powerful. People start asking questions. How did they get so wealthy so fast? How do they always seem to know what's coming? How can 5 brothers coordinate across hostile nations? And when you're looking for answers in the 19th century, before financial journalism, before transparency regulations, before anyone really understands how international finance works, people fill the gaps with speculation. The speculation becomes rumor. The rumor becomes legend. The legend becomes conspiracy. By the 1840s, pamphlets circulate across Europe claiming the Rothschilds control governments, that they manipulate wars, that they answer to no nation and serve only themselves. Some of this criticism is economic populism, anger at wealthy bankers during financial crises. Some is political conservatives and revolutionaries both distrust international capitalism. And some, we need to be honest here, stems from older, darker prejudices that have nothing to do with banking and everything to do with identity. But here's what's crucial to understand. The Rothschilds don't control these narratives. They can't, because by the nature of their business, they operate in secrecy. Bank-client relationships are confidential. Government loans are sensitive. Cross-border financial movements need discretion. That secrecy necessary for their business becomes ammunition for their critics. When you don't know what's happening behind closed doors, imagination fills the void. And imagination, fed by suspicion, creates monsters. Let's address the specific myths directly. Myth 1. The Rothschilds started every major war. The reality: they financed many wars, yes. But so did every major bank. Governments need capital during conflict. Banks provide it. That's not conspiracy, it's the business model of sovereign debt. Did they profit from war? Absolutely. But they also lost fortunes when governments defaulted, when revolutions seized assets, when clients couldn't repay. War was profitable when governments won and paid back loans. War was catastrophic when governments lost and collapsed. The Rothschilds didn't want instability. They wanted stable governments that honored debts. Their ideal world was peace with predictable interest payments. Myth 2. They control the world's money supply. The reality: at their peak, roughly 1815 to 1860, the Rothschilds controlled perhaps 5% of the world as liquid capital, enormous by individual standards. But nowhere near majority control. They influenced certain markets, yes. They could move gold prices. They could affect bond yields. But control the global money supply? Impossible. National governments, other banking houses, the Bank of England, the French Treasury, dozens of institutions held far more collective power. The Rothschilds were powerful players, not omnipotent controllers. Myth 3. Their wealth has only grown. The reality: the Rothschild fortune peaked in the mid-1800s. By the early 1900s, new competitors emerged. J.P. Morgan, the Warburgs, Deutsche Bank, national central banks. World War I devastated their European network. Nationalization and revolutions seized assets. World War II destroyed much of what remained. Today, Rothschild & Co. exists as a mid-sized investment bank, wealthy by normal standards. Not even in the top 20 global financial institutions. Their current market capitalization, about $5 billion. For context, J.P. Morgan Chase alone is worth over $500 billion. The empire didn't grow. It fragmented, declined, and normalized. Here's my final point. The Rothschilds weren't magical. They were strategic. They didn't control history. They understood timing, they didn't rule from shadows. They built a business model that matched their era. And when that era ended, when information became instant, when capital became digital, when banking became global and institutionalized, their advantage disappeared. The legend outlived the reality. And maybe that's the real lesson. Myths are more durable than empires. The Rothschild financial network lasted a century. The Rothschild conspiracy theory has lasted 2 centuries and counting. Not because it's true, because it's useful. It gives us a villain for complexity. A name for our anxieties. A simple answer to difficult questions. But if we're serious about understanding power, wealth, and finance, we have to let go of the mythology. We have to study systems, not surnames. Follow money, not myths. Understand structures, not scapegoats. The real story of the Rothschilds is the story of how information became capital, how reputation became power, how one family rode the wave of financial revolution and then watched as history moved on. That's not conspiracy, that's capitalism. And it's far more interesting than any legend. This is the Capital Historian Studios. The truth is always stranger than fiction, you just have to know where to look. If this changed how you see financial mythology, share this with someone who still believes the stories. Because the first step to understanding power is seeing it clearly.